Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to begin our presentation shortly. Okay, let's get started. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to our webinar on preparing your graduate application. My name is Stephanie Forsyth, and I'm the manager of graduate admissions at the University of Waterloo. Our presenter today is Julie McMillan, the Associate Director of Graduate Admissions. We're really excited to share some tips and tricks with you today to assist you in getting ready to apply to graduate studies at the University of Waterloo. I will go over some housekeeping items before we begin. Today's format will include a live presentation followed by a question and answer session. Attendee video and audio functions are disabled. If you have questions at any time during the presentation, please use the Q&A function at the bottom center of your screen. If you require closed captioning, please click on the CC icon on the bottom right corner of your screen. If your question is flagged to be answered during the Q&A following the presentation, it will remain pending until it's answered live. Otherwise, we'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible in the background during the presentation. And lastly, any links mentioned will be added to the chat box during the presentation. And this presentation is being recorded and will be posted on the GSPA website. Before we proceed, I would like to share that the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldimand Tract, the land promised to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building. I would now like to introduce Julie McMillan, the Associate Director of Graduate Admissions, who will speak to you about preparing your graduate application.
Thank you, Steph. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As Steph mentioned, my name is Julie McMillan. I am the Associate Director of Graduate Admissions here in Grad Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs at the University of Waterloo. So just a little bit about Waterloo to start us off. We do have about 42,000 students attending Waterloo annually. This includes both graduate and undergraduate leveled students. We have about 6,600 graduate students on campus. The breakdown is there for you, about 2,200 PhD, 2,100 professional, and then about 1,800 research masters. We have 40% of our graduate students who are international, something we're very proud of, and we've been ranked again #1 most innovative university via Maclean's. We have a main campus, which is situated here in Waterloo, along with 3 satellite campuses located in Kitchener, Stratford, and Cambridge. We also have 6 different faculties and 4 affiliated and federated institutions. So our faculties include arts, engineering, environment, health, math, science. Did I miss any? I can't remember. That's okay. And then Waterloo is definitely a city for students. We have the University of Waterloo, we have Wilfrid Laurier, and we have Conestoga College. Videos that you might be interested in are a virtual tour of our main campus here at Waterloo. That'll be posted to the chat, as well as a region of Waterloo tour for grad students, just to give you a sense of what goes on here in the city of Waterloo. So it is important to find the right graduate program, one that will align with your academic interests, educational background, and your ideal career path. So we do have over 180 graduate programs here at Waterloo, each of them with a very unique offering. So understanding the type of program will help you select a program that is the best fit for you. We do have course-based master's programs, which are designed to help you prepare for advanced professional practice. Courses may involve projects such as a major research paper, an industry project, or other work that you would do with a faculty advisor. Our courses will help you in developing communication, critical thinking, and technical skills, all of which will support your future career. We also have research-based masters. These obviously have a research focus, and you need to be self-motivated and interested in building your knowledge in a specialized area. So this can lead you to a rewarding career in either the public or private sector, or it can also provide a foundation for pursuing research at the doctoral level. And then we have our PhD or doctoral level programs, which will allow you to continue to focus and develop the research which you may have started at the master's level. It's important to note that we do have some PhD level programs that will admit you directly from your bachelor's, and they would be looking for similar things in terms of additional research ability. So PhD programs can lead you to a career in either industry or academia. You will write and submit a doctoral dissertation of independent and original work. It's important to note that for each of our programs that we do offer, we've created a list of programs, and each of those programs will have an associated program page. So there will be a link dropped into the chat that will take you directly to our program listing. Within that foundation, or within the summary of that program page, you will be able to see a plethora of information. So you'll be looking at what department or school the program you're interested in is associated with, the faculty it's attached to, any admit terms that they will admit through. So many of our programs will have a rolling admission, which just means they would have entry at either our fall, winter, or spring term. And then there are a few that are once a year. So their program has been set up in such a way that your courses must be taken in a specific sequence. So they would have an admission in fall only. So the program page will tell you what those admit terms are, what the application and document submission deadlines are as well. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're a little bit different. It'll talk about delivery mode, which would be either on campus or online. It'll talk about the program type, whether it be research, coursework, professional. It'll give you the length of program, whether they offer full-time and part-time, or just full-time, or just part-time, depending on the situation. It'll also go over some of the graduate research fields or specializations that may be tied or attached to that program. And then there's just some other very useful information. So minimum admission requirements, the documents that are required, whether or not supervisor is required for this program, various application material. There's a link off to our budget calculator, which I think is a great tool. And then some additional information through our student financial services. So they have a tuition page as well. And then some study and living cost information and additional resources that are useful. One of the key things to note, though, for each of our program pages, there will also be a specific program contact. So, you know, we're here to talk about sort of overview of the high level Waterloo requirements or university requirements, but there's going to be some really detailed and specific information that the program contact will be able to answer in just far more detail than we will. So in some cases, it's a person and an email address. Some cases, it's a generic email account, and that's often because that program may have multiple people supporting the role. And sometimes it's a form. So there's some different ways that you can connect with the programs, but I do encourage you to consider using that as a great source of information. So something we get asked quite a bit is what it takes to get in. And so we know that the university will establish minimum guidelines. And we do that, but we also acknowledge that the program that you're interested in may indicate higher or additional requirements. So when you're looking at the university level admission requirements for PhD, we're asking that you would have at least a 75% overall standing or equivalent in your previous degree, and then that you would be able to demonstrate other superior qualifications such as advanced research ability. And so we're saying the university is asking for 75. I would suggest that most programs are asking for an 80 or higher. And that too will be listed on the program page, what their requirements are. And then if you're educated outside of Canada, we have created a list of international admission equivalencies. So that's where I'm saying the or equivalent to what the 75% is. And that list will include the location or country that the degree is being offered in, the type of qualification that we're expecting to see, as well as the overall GPA or academic standing that we would be required to see. When you're looking at admission to a master's, the university level requirement is at least a 75% overall standing in the last 2 years of a 4-year honors degree or equivalent when you're applying with domestic credentials. We are asking for 75% overall standing in your complete 4-year honors bachelor's degree or equivalent when you are applying with international credentials. And so those being the university level minimums, I would look at most programs asking for about a 75 to 78% admission requirement. Something that is important to note, though, is obviously the applicant pool can affect what the overall average will be. So if it's a really strong cohort of applicants, we could still go beyond that 78%, but we're just talking in generality. So what we would be used to seeing in terms of normal cutoffs. So I'm going to speak a little bit more about finding a supervisor, contacting your referees, and the various ELP requirements next. But right now, I just wanted to go over some of the additional supporting documents that might be required. So when you are looking at uploading transcripts or providing transcripts, we would ask that you declare all post-secondary education, including any incomplete or in progress programs. And when you get to that stage of uploading documents, we're only asking that you provide an unofficial copy. So if an offer is made at a later date, we would then assign a condition of admission that would ask you to provide us with that official transcript. We have a supplementary information form, which will include program-specific questions and possibly a statement of purpose or a statement of interest, depending on the program. The resume or CV may be required by the program you're applying to. That will also be listed on the program page. Right now, it's not a requirement for all programs across the board. And then a writing sample may be required. This can be new work, or it could be that they're asking you to provide something that was previously completed, either something published or an assignment that you may have completed in your previous program. GRE or GMAT scores are required by a small subset of programs. That too will be listed on the program page. And then a portfolio submission is it's only required if you are applying to the MFA in Fine Arts or to the School of Architecture. International student resources. So we are proud to have a large cohort of international graduate students. And in the chat, you will see a link to our international admission equivalencies, which we previously talked about. We also have admission and English language proficiency requirements. So this talks about the minimum averages required for each program, and then also the ELP requirements. So it'll go over the most commonly used scores, what we accept as test scores, and what those test score requirements are, and also what the exemption requirements would be. We also have international agreement and sponsorship. So we do have a few formalized agreements that exist within specific countries. So we work, for example, with CALDO for Latin American countries such as Mexico, Chile, Panama, Brazil. We just recently went on a recruitment event in 4 different countries along with CALDO. So that's a consortium of institutions that work together to form agreements with the funding agencies within those countries. And we work with the China CSC Scholarship Program. And so those are things that we recognize and will have signed agreements for. There may be other things as well that you have access to that is not part of our formalized agreement, but you're welcome to submit those when you're applying. The application form itself has an other information section, and in that area you can see it drop down for international agreements, and there is an option for other. So the formalized agreements will be listed there, and then there's also an other section. And it's important to note that we recognize many of these agreements will need you to have an offer in hand in order to apply for that. So there is an opportunity for you to send us an email with a copy of your agreement if it's already been confirmed. But if you know you need the offer, you can also send a note on to grad admissions and let us know. We can add a note to your file so that we're aware of that. So let's talk a little bit about English language proficiency requirements. So the official language of instruction at Waterloo is English, and it is our responsibility to ensure that all students have the English language skills required to be successful. So we currently have the 3 bands or levels of ELP scores that I have listed on the slide. So your program would fall into one of these bands. And if we go back to that program page, you will see on the program page, we have listed our 2 most common test scores, TOEFL, IELTS, and then also our English for Academic Success program. So outside of TOEFL and IELTS, we also accept the CALE, the PTE Academic, the Cambridge English, and EFAS. EFAS is offered through Renison, excuse me, Renison University College's English Language Institute, and that's located here on our main campus at the University of Waterloo. So EFAS is an intensive full-term English language program that's designed to help students improve their English language proficiency as well as meet Waterloo's ELP requirements. So ELP exemptions can be confirmed by reviewing the information on our website. There'll be a link dropped into the chat that will provide an overview of the 5 sets of criteria that you have to meet in order to be considered for an ELP exemption. Finding a supervisor, if it's a requirement of the program you're applying to, that would be most often our master's research level programs and obviously our PhD level programs. For our research-based masters, you'll find that some departments do require, and PhD, sorry, for our research-based programs, some of our departments or schools do require that you have that supervisor confirmed before you apply. So some don't require that, and you can just indicate on your application people that you're interested in working with or areas of research that you're interested in working in. And the program can then use that to sort of make connections. But we do have a few programs that require that you have a confirmed supervisor ahead of applying. That information is listed on the program page so that there aren't any surprises when you're going through the application process. We will also drop into the chat a link that will take you to some great information on how to find a supervisor located on our Future Students website. So most faculty members will have a personal webpage. It'll explain their area of research, how they approach their work. Most often pages will contain information about their current projects, current students, and it's really a great way to see, if this possible faculty member is a good fit for you. So I would say connect with the faculty member's website, reach out to them with your thoughts on a research proposal. If there's a great connection, then you can determine if it's a possible fit and if they would be willing to work with you as part of the program. We do like to note that there may be a delay in response from some of our faculty. We know they're busy. The reality is too, and I don't, what I want is a response for everyone, but I also know that some faculty members that work in our bigger programs, I feel like they get quite a large number of emails, and I'm not sure that they're able to address all of them all the time. But we do our best to connect you with the program coordinator or even our office if you can't get access to those folks. So when you're reaching out to your supervisor, I would say don't send a generic email. Try to make it a little more personalized. I think if you're just doing that copy paste where you're switching out the name from one faculty member to another, it's not really giving them an authentic feel about who you are and why you would be a good fit to work with each other. So also important to know what you're interested in researching and then articulate your research interests well. Do your homework, look into the program that you're thinking of applying to, read the website and show the prospective faculty member that you do know about the program and that it's important to you. And then know who you're writing to. So does their research align with your interests? Are they going to see you as a colleague that can also help them with their research? Another place to really understand the faculty members' research is on Google Scholar. So here you can read abstracts from their research publications and really get to know what they do in their work. And then also just be mindful of their time. You can open the door to further discussions about possible supervision over email. and then possibly meet virtually or in person. I mean, one thing the pandemic has taught us is that we have access to great technology. So if it makes sense that you can connect with them in a format like Zoom or Teams, then I say go for it. And then finally, be concise. So I would say the more concise, the better. You know, a super long email may not get their attention. They may not read through all of it. You know, we just want to make sure that you can make that connection. It's a very important part of the application process. And then we would move into or onto selecting a referee. So we know references are also an important part of your application. Your referees are going to be completing and submitting a confidential online reference form. So it's important to note that this information is never going to be shared back with you as the applicant. Your application itself under FIPA is open to you to request access to, but this piece of it would be considered confidential. We also recommend that you contact your referees with a minimum of 4 weeks notice before the application deadline. This will just give them the time they need to put together the reference, get it submitted into the system. We can assume that you're not the single reference they're writing and they may have others. So just being mindful of their time and respectful of their time. So at Waterloo, we have 2 different types of references. We have academic and professional. Those requirements are also listed on the specific program page as to the number of and the type that would be required by the program you're applying to. So for academic references, we ask that you choose referees who know your skills and experience and who can communicate your ability to succeed as a graduate student. They will be asked to refer to your past academic performance and your potential as a graduate student. So if you're in a research program that includes a thesis or a research paper, we would expect that this faculty member would be one of your referees. So this referee will be able to explain your commitment to deadlines, how you respond to critique, and whether or not you were able to successfully implement feedback to your work. And then is there a faculty member that you've discussed your broader goals with? So your referee will have more to say about you if they understand some of your career aspirations or what and why you're interested in studying further. And then when we look at the professional referee category, so professional referees are typically senior level employees or supervisors. So they need to be able to attest to your possessions of the skills and experience required for the program of admission. And then have a conversation with your referee about what your career goals are and why this program will help you reach these goals. So the more they understand about why the graduate program you're applying to will help you reach your career goals and how they will have an impact on your career aspirations, the easier it will be for them to incorporate this information into their reference for you. You know, referees will be asked to articulate how strong you are in terms of professional skills such as leadership and communication. So be sure that they will have positive things to say about you. And then how to ask for a reference letter. So while this may seem obvious, I think it needs to be said, please make sure that you ask them if they're willing and able to be a reference for you before you submit their contact information as part of the application. So I would say you approach possible references in a manner that is appropriate to the professional relationship that you have with them. So whether that's over coffee, over office hours, sending them an email, but just be clear as to why you've decided to reach out to them specifically. Be sure to leave lots of time. So, as I've said, we know referees are busy. They're filling out the reference. We know also that filling out our reference form takes time and that most likely we're not the only reference they're completing. So we ask if you could give them 4 to 6 weeks notice. That just gives you time to submit your application, make sure that they have time to complete their reference, and then you're not worried and stressed about meeting the application deadline. So it's important to provide your referees with your academic background. So give them a copy of your transcripts, your CV or resume, and then this will allow them to craft a more robust reference letter. I would say you could send a gentle reminder about a week before the deadline if they've not already submitted a reference letter. You'll be able to track this in our application system, whether or not it's been submitted. And also our reference system will send out 2 or 3 reminders once we have that in the system. And then I would say just make sure to thank them. So send a quick note as a thank you. Also be sure to follow up with them and let them know if you were accepted into the program. So just a quick overview of where we are so far. You've researched your program, you're aware of those requirements, you know the application deadline, You understand the admission requirements, so overall GPA, ELP, test scores, etc. You've connected with the potential supervisor if that is a requirement of the program you're going into. You have connected with your referees, and now you've gathered your supporting documents. And so we're able to move on to completing the actual application. So this link will also be dropped into the chat. As we've talked about, we have about 180 programs plus here at Waterloo. So there's a plethora for you to choose from. Our Future Students application website is created to provide sort of that one-stop shopping for you to see what is required. So we have basic how to apply information. We also have funding your education. We've got tips and tricks for writing a statement of interest. We've put together quite a lot of information. So I encourage you to take a look and utilize those resources. Each program page will list the application deadline for the program you're interested in going into. We have our most standard deadline for a fall admit will be February 1st, but some programs do have an earlier admit term deadline. So right now, I think some of our math programs have a deadline tomorrow. Our Master of Social Work programs deadline has passed. It's a specialized professional program. And most of our programs, I think, as we chatted about already too, have admissions in the fall term, but we do know that there are those that continue to have admissions throughout the year, so fall, winter, and spring. If you have questions or concerns about any of this information, you're welcome to send an email to gradadmissions@uwaterloo.ca, and myself or one of the admissions team will be happy to follow up with you. So when you're completing the online application, you're going to create an account and then you're going to complete the actual application portion. So when you're doing that, you're going to need to provide personal information, address information, your academic background, test scores if you have them and they're required, your professional background, and your referees' names and email addresses. So your referees will be emailed within 2 to 3 business days after you complete this step, which is why we say it's important to make sure that you have confirmed their availability ahead of time. And then when you've entered all of your information, you'll pay the application fee, and that will take you through step 1. So around the same time the email goes out for your references, we will also be sending out an email to you, and this will provide you with instructions on how to claim your identity, which is really just your Waterloo user ID and password. This will give you access to Quest, which is our Waterloo student information system. So the email will give you your 8-digit Waterloo student ID number, which will become your unique Waterloo ID. And then when you have claimed or activated your user ID and password, you will be able to log into Quest and begin the process of uploading your documents. So you're going to navigate through in Quest to the admission section and select documents. And then you'll see a list of the required documents that you need to upload based on your program. So most often this will be a list of previous institutions that you indicated on your application. So you would be uploading transcripts into that section. And then if a resume is required, if you have a TOEFL or other ELP score or a GRE or a GMAT, you'll have a little upload link for that. And then as well, there's a supplementary information form link, which is essentially a set of questions that the program has put together and is asking you to complete. And that's a little text box where you're just cutting and pasting from perhaps Word. And then everything will change from initiated. You'll see it go to upload. So there's a little yellow diamond associated with each document required that will switch to upload and then switch to a green check mark when it's completed. This is also where you would track whether or not your references have submitted their reference form yet. So now we're into the review of your application. So we understand that you're eager for us to provide a admission decision as soon as possible. And so it is also our goal to get that information out to you. We recognize that Waterloo may not be the only institution you're applying to, and we just want to be sure that you have all of your offers available to you to make the best decision for you moving forward. Now, application processing timelines can vary by program and faculty, but generally you can expect a decision with, I would say, 8 to 10 weeks of the application deadline. So you'll see a link in the handout section where a link will be posted to the chat where you can see information on processing timelines by faculty. So when we're looking at how the application is reviewed, it is first reviewed by the academic unit to which you've applied. So this would be the department or the school or the program. So this academic unit will manage the supervisory review process, if applicable, and then applicants who are selected by the academic unit are then recommended for admission, and the file is pushed on to the Faculty Associate Dean's office. The Faculty Associate Dean's office then reviews the application, and all applications approved for admission are then sent on to Grad Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs, which is our office, for review and final approval. So it is GSPA who reviews your application to verify admissibility, and then once a final decision has been made, we would apply that decision in Quest. So you will see Quest updated. You'll also receive an email confirming the decision, and then any offers of admission are also posted to Quest, so you can view and then print or download a copy of the electronic offer letter. Okay, so this takes us to the live Q&A section of our presentation. So I'm going to stop presenting so that we can chat with my colleagues to see what has been flagged.
So if anybody has any questions they've been waiting and hoping to have answered live, please submit them now. We do have one that we can start off with, Julie.
Sure.
So in a situation where an applicant has contacted a supervisor whose research area really aligns with their interest and they haven't got a response, should they go ahead and apply for the program without hearing back from the supervisor?
I think you can, unless that program is asking you to have a supervisor confirmed ahead of submitting your application. So I think in general, as long as the program itself is not saying you have to have that confirmation of supervisor, you can indicate anyone who you're interested in working with on the application. You can list up to 3 people. And then what we know is that the program itself will use that information and share the file out with the faculty member directly. So they would have a chance to look at your complete application once it's in the system.
Awesome. Okay, another reference question. When you are contacting people for references, is it important to have known them beforehand? This person is an undergrad student and they have a few professors in mind whom they'd like to request a reference from, but for many of them, they have interacted very little, especially since the pandemic did provide opportunities to do so. And how would you best approach someone in that case?
So I think having a candid conversation with the prospective referee is your best bet. So if they've taught you in a course and they can look back at your performance in that course, then it gives them a benchmark. But I think the bigger question is, are they comfortable being a referee? So listen to them, because I think what you want is someone who you know will write that strong reference for you. So if they're not able to say they will, then I would suggest that may not be the best option in terms of a referee.
Okay, great. Another reference question: can you ask an academic reference can you ask for an academic reference if it is not in the same faculty that you're applying to for your master's program?
Yes. So we're assuming that the reference that you're talking to can still speak to the work that you've completed within your previous academic program. So there's not an expectation that they're talking about what you're going to do, but you want them to be able to talk about what you've done well and why that will support you as you move into your new program.
Perfect. Let's see. What is expected in the supplemental information form?
So the supplemental information form is really a set of questions that has been put together by the program itself. They may be, tell us a little bit about yourself, tell us why you're interested in the program. It might be a writing sample. It might be tell us what courses you'd like to take. Sometimes it's a way for them to flag. For instance, we have some programs that would like to consider your application for a partner program if you're not successful here. So they're going to ask you that question. Would you allow us to use your application to be considered for this program? So it's really just a series of questions.
Perfect. What is the process to select a supervisor? How would an applicant know professors at Waterloo can be a supervisor?
So in most cases, you would be looking at the faculty member's webpage. The hope is that they are indicating whether or not they're taking students. I know it's also at Waterloo, we are somewhat decentralized. So the Faculty of Engineering has done a really good job at creating a place where you can look at research and also understand what faculty members are available. In some cases, it might be as simple as, are they still currently active? Have they indicated that information on their own faculty webpage, or can you contact the program directly and ask them if they are aware of which faculty members are taking students right now?
Great. So we have somebody, this is a specific situation, but it could apply to other people. So they've been out of school for some time
Mhm.
and they're interested in a change of career, moving into a research-based career. What kind of references might be relevant in a situation like this where they've been out of school for a while?
So I think you'd have to look. So I always encourage you to reach out to the program directly. So I think the program will have a ton of experience in various types of applicants coming through. Sometimes it may be that we haven't dealt with all of those possible scenarios, but in some cases, I know that programs are willing to change the type of reference that they require depending on the amount of time that you've been out of school. So if your career, like let's say we're at 10 plus years since you've been in school, but you have a career that spans that time and you're leaning on that as a way to show success in your future grad programs, I would say talk to the program directly, let them know, ask if perhaps a professional reference makes more sense in this case.
So back to reference letters. Do you think that having most classes from home or online due to COVID will hinder the quality of reference letters compared to previous years?
I don't think it has to hinder it because I would liken it to sitting in a classroom with, hundreds of other students. So it's going to be, you would still provide them with the same information. You may not have had that one-on-one. You may not have had a lot of personal interaction, but the faculty member who taught the course will still have your performance in that course. And so they're able to use that as an indicator of how to then craft a reference for you. And you can certainly add to that. So the more information you give them, the more they have to include. So if there's something you thought that went well in the program, if you connected with a TA or other supports and you want to, get comments from them as well, then maybe all of that together can be used by the person teaching the course to write the reference for you.
Perfect. So we actually have seen quite a few questions about this, and one was flagged for me to ask live. There's been a lot of questions about ELP exemptions, Julie.
Yep.
So I don't know if you want to just briefly go over
Sure.
what qualifies someone for an ELP exemption.
Yep, happy to. So we have 5 categories that we look at first, and I have the website up right now, so I'm happy to sort of read through them for you. And what we look for is number 1, if you've completed 3 or more years of post-secondary education at a Canadian institution, or if you've completed a graduate degree at a Canadian institution, if you've completed 3 or more years of post-secondary education or completed a graduate degree in an exempt country, and we have a list of exempt countries that you can refer to. And then the other option would be if you've been employed for at least 3 years in a position in which English was the language of business in a country listed below. So again, our list of exempt countries. And then the final one, which I know is probably the most confusing, we use the International Association of Universities World Higher Education Database, or the WHED. And if you look for your institution on that, within that database, if English is the only language of instruction, we would consider you exempt. And that exemption would last for 2 years after graduation.
Thanks, Julie. We actually don't have any outstanding questions at this time. If anyone else would like to submit one, please go ahead and do so. Okay, one just came in from Jennifer. We can talk about this. So if my bachelor's degree is in the process of being issued and not ready by the application due date, can they submit provisional certificates or incomplete transcripts for assessment at the time application is submitted?
Absolutely. So this happens all the time. We appreciate that you're going to be applying quite a bit ahead of the start of your new program. So make sure that you will be degree complete before the start of program, and then just provide us with what you have in terms of in progress documents. If an offer is made, we will assign a condition that basically says you have to provide us with the final document that shows all your courses and marks and the awarding of degrees. And I guess if something happens and you can't complete your program, then there's a whole other possible scenarios where we would look at deferrals and stuff.
Thank you. So somebody asked how relevant marks are if the first degree was finished over 20 years ago.
I think marks are an indicator of, how you did in your program. But if you can say, so this sort of, and this is where we often say grad is a very gray area for admission. So it's not that we are saying you must have this mark, and this mark alone will get you into a program. If you can show the program you're applying to why you are a good fit, then there's room for them to say, hey, your success in industry over these past 5, 10 years or 20 years shows us that you probably have the capability to move on to a graduate degree. They also have options to consider admitting you as a probationary student, which just means you would be asked to complete 1 or 2 courses and obtain a specific mark. And if there's something really out of whack and they're not sure that it's a good fit, it doesn't happen as often, but you could be admitted as a qualifying student, which essentially means they're going to put together a group of most likely undergrad or grad courses to say, show us your success in these, and then we'll ask you to reapply to a grad program again.
Great. What's the difference between research-based and course-based masters?
Great question. So we touched on this a little bit. Our coursework program is typically comprised of coursework only. So it's maybe geared towards professionals, or we have some great professional programs. MMT comes to mind, MBET, MSW, and we have research-based programs which are geared towards you completing either a major research paper, a thesis, or some other kind of project. And that would be the foundational program that you would need to move into a PhD. So typically, you don't go from a coursework master's into a PhD program. The length of time will change too. So most of our coursework programs, I would say, are completed within a year. And I would say for our research programs, you're looking at a year and a year, which is 3 terms, to maybe 4 or 2 years or 6 terms.
Great. Is there an age limit if you want to apply for grad studies?
There is not an age limit, but there is a tuition discount for seniors.
Okay. Will a department start reviewing applications after the deadline or as soon as applications come in? And how long will it take to hear back?
So it does vary by program. I know that we have a few programs who are very good at trying to get through their files as soon as they come in. But I would say generally what I'm seeing is most programs want to have their full applicant pool available to them. It allows them to just rank and then choose the top candidates that have applied. So normally we're looking at about 8 to 10 weeks from the application deadline for you to get a response from that program. It may be sooner, but just to be safe. I think we also posted a link in the chat that will take you to the faculty processing timelines. And so because we are a little bit decentralized, there is some difference across the faculties.
Okay, we have another question about references. So someone's stating that their teachers from their former university are not available. So what are some other possible references that they might be able to obtain?
So, you can look at possible professional references. It would be great to have a conversation with your program to understand if they can look at accepting a different type of reference. So maybe explaining the situation, and then just let them know, and they can work with you to determine what might be a good option.
Great. Somebody wants to know how you get scholarships. I know that we are not the scholarship team, but maybe just a brief overview of that.
Sure. I think that there was a scholarship webinar that was already put together too. So we do have So there are scholarship competitions that you can apply for at Waterloo. We have what is known as the Tri-Agency Awards that incorporates NSERC, SHIR, CHIR, and OGS. For the Tri-Agency, the majority of those I think are open to domestic applicants. OGS is both domestic and international, but the international quota I think it's not very big. There are some specific international scholarships or funding opportunities. There's an actual database that the awards team has put together that you can search through. And then there's a lot of funding that is directed by the program. So we have endowments and trusts where each of our programs and or faculties have access to funds. And in many cases, these don't need an application. It could just be that it's a merit-based award and they go through their applicants and they assign it to their offer. So when you are looking at coming into a coursework program, typically there's no funding. When you look at our master's research programs, there's often, we have a guideline for funding, and I think it's still at 12,500 if I'm not mistaken, so 12,500 a year. But some of our programs provide a little bit more. And then when you're looking at funding for PhD programs, there's a minimum funding of 25,000 per year that has to be provided by the faculty member that is supporting you or working with you. And then on top of that, there may be International Doctoral Student Award, which is part of our international funding for PhD students. There are some other similar level awards for masters, but those are cohort based and determined by the faculty. So again, no application is required. So it's we could go on for hours, but definitely there's great information on the website. The awards team has put together webinars, and if they haven't already presented one, there will be one, I'm sure, coming.
Okay, a question about co-op. Is it possible to be in a co-op program and get graduate program funding at the same time?
Yes, I believe you could, although if I'm not mistaken, the majority of our co-op programs are tied to coursework programs. So if they are offering you funding, it won't be detracted because you're in a co-op program. But you would just have to look at that. I can't think off the top of my head if we have any that are at the research level. Looking really fast. Oh, chemistry. I'm going to say that it shouldn't. So if there's an expectation of funding, but that will be outlined. So if an offer is made, that would be outlined. Co-op at the grad level is something that's been around for a little while, but has also been evolving. So if you have specific questions about that, I would encourage you also to connect with the program. They're going to know for sure how they're going to break out their funding for those programs.
Okay, great. Let me see. This is a really good question from Timothy. What are some steps you recommend for current undergrad students to set them up for a smooth transition into a master's or doctoral program? And are there any things that grad students wish they knew before applying?
Ooh, that's a good one. So things that are useful, I guess if you know you want to go on to a master's research program at the undergrad level, if you're in so within Waterloo, we have our own Waterloo undergrads are given opportunities to do NSARC USRAs, which are essentially little, does it happen over the summer term? It's like a little internship where they get to go work with a faculty member in a lab, hopefully, or in industry and understand what that would be like to, be involved in that type of research. So I think getting access to those things ahead of time will give you a sense if it's actually what you want to do. So take time. I mean, a lot of our grad programs will offer drop-in sessions or grad visit days or, sessions where you can meet and greet with faculty members. Don't be afraid to ask people questions. Don't be afraid to go and meet with them now and say, hey, I'm interested. What does it look like? Can you show me a lab? You can talk to students who are already in the program. They'll give you a great sense of what happens day to day. I think that's all very important stuff. What was the rest of the question, Steph? Did I miss any of it?
Just if there is anything that grad students wish they knew before they apply.
I don't know. I haven't had anyone come back to me and say, I wish that I had known this. So if you're going to apply, I want you to tell me, Timothy, if there's something that comes up when you're at the other end, so that we can add this to future webinars.
Okay, awesome. So what criteria does UW look for when considering somebody for direct entry to PhD?
So that's pretty specific to each faculty and or program, but I can cheat and look, hang on. Normally there's an expectation that you are a high level achiever in your undergraduate program. So we have lots of great things too, where you can do accelerated masters. So you can start in your you can be in your undergrad program and you can apply to a master's program and then start taking grad courses ahead. So there's that option too. And then it's really just that strength of your undergrad work that you did. So quite often I would say there was still a component of research in your undergrad program. There was something that directly ties you to being able to step directly into research at the PhD level.
Okay, is there a recommended template that the GSB expects for a resume?
No, we don't. Although some programs may ask you for a resume and or a CV. So we recognize that those two things are different. Whereas, the CV is typically more based in publications and work that you've completed. So just pay attention to what the program is asking you for.
If I have an undergrad degree that is completely different from what I would like to study for my master's, would that affect my application in a negative way?
Not necessarily, but you have to be aware of what the program is asking you to have. So if they're telling you that you must have a Bachelor of Science to go into science, then don't come in with a Bachelor of Arts and wonder why you didn't get admitted. So be aware, and then there is room in some cases for you to perhaps, take some courses as a gap, stopgap measure, so that you can then say, hey, look, I can show you I've done successfully these 3 courses in this discipline that I want to move into. So talk to the program, find out what your options are and if they can support you through that.
Great. So this is a question that we have seen a lot since COVID, but how are we assessing somebody's transcript when they have credit, non-credit courses? And are we looking at marks overall or just from the final 2 years?
So we still look at the final 2 years. They may, the program itself may go back and just look, but you also have to, so I would say number one, make sure when you're looking at what the program is saying, the university is saying we are looking at a minimum of X over the last 2 years. If the program is asking for something different, they will highlight that. So we need to make sure that we're meeting that program's requirements. But it's my understanding that even at Waterloo, we've issued credit or no credit marks for our students as well. And so for us, it's not a negative implication on your overall transcript. If there aren't enough marks, would be the only time I think they might want to look back and just see how things were going at the beginning of your program. But that's a good question. I would say that's a great question for the program as well, because just to be clear of what their requirements are and make sure that we're meeting those.
Okay, I just have one more pending here at the moment. Is it possible to go from a course-based master's program to a PhD program? And is it recommended, if you don't know if you want to pursue a PhD later down the road, that you would stick to a coursework program then?
So right now, the Faculty of Engineering will allow students who have completed their coursework master's, which is a Master of Engineering. They will let them move into a PhD, but they have their own specific criteria. So it's not across the board at Waterloo. I would say generally most of our PhDs are looking for completion of a thesis-based or a research-based master's. So they will outline that on their requirements as well. What you could possibly do is, so like at Waterloo, quite often our research and course-based masters, if you're looking, say, I worked in the Department of Management Sciences, and the courses that were completed for our coursework program and our thesis program at the master's level were essentially the same. So there could be room for you to say, I'd like to move into the research-based master's when I'm done, before I graduate. And that would just require that you would have a faculty member willing to act as your supervisor.
Okay. Someone asked if we can share our contact details.
Yep.
So we can put that in the chat. I'll put that in now. Okay, well, maybe we'll stick around a little bit longer in case anybody else wants to submit any questions that they would like answered in our Q&A section. But thank you everybody so much for joining us today. And Julie, thank you so much for that fantastic presentation.
Thank you, Steph.